This segment is brought to you by Buick. Exceptional by design.
We'll now call the Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government Council meeting to order. Item 1B. Resolution urging and requesting the parish president to approve the new location for the sale between the Finding Our Roots Museum and Martin Falls at 7928 Main Street, Houma, Louisiana. Move by Mr. Trusclair.
Second.
Second by Mr. Pleasure. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a couple notes on this. We have our experts, CSRS, in the audience to answer any questions. And I'd like to note that when we received the letter from Martin Falls, that we've been working on it since we got it with them to come up with a response and address all the items listed in that letter. And just want to let everybody know those two things.
Okay. Mr. Amadine.
It's resolution number 25-blank. A resolution of the Terrebonne Parish Council urging and requesting the parish president to seek approval for the new location for the sale between Finding Our Roots Museum and Morpho Inc. at 7928 Main Street, Houma, Louisiana. Whereas the Terrebonne Parish Council previously considered and approved the sale and cooperative endeavor agreement involving the Finding Our Roots Museum and Morpho Inc. for the location at 7938 Main Street, and whereas after further consideration and public comment, the council recognizes that the property located at 7928 Main Street, Houma, Louisiana, presents a smaller scale and more feasible alternative for the museum project. And whereas the new location at 7928 Main Street will save Terrebonne Parish approximately $2 million in Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, CDBG-DR, funding, which savings may be redirected toward other parish priorities and pressing infrastructure needs. And whereas it is the desire of this council that, to the extent allowed by the CDBG-DR guidelines and by the Louisiana Office of Community Development, the revised location eliminates the need for a subrecipient agreement and allows further administration of the grant to remain between the Office of Community Development and the Finding Our Roots Museum. And whereas, to the extent allowed by the CDBG-DR guidelines and by the Louisiana Office of Community Development, the council requests that the 7928 Main Street property not be encumbered by burdensome restrictions and Finding Our Roots Museum be allowed greater flexibility in pursuing additional revenue streams to ensure long-term operational success. And whereas the revised location may enable Finding Our Roots Museum to access a broader base of existing funding opportunities from private, state, and federal sources, thereby strengthening its financial sustainability. And whereas the proposed change in location directly addresses genuine and good faith concerns expressed by members of the public and this council regarding scale, financing, and feasibility. And whereas the use of 7928 Main Street will allow Finding Our Roots Museum to open its doors more quickly and begin telling the important story of African Americans in Terrebonne Parish, thereby contributing to the cultural, educational, and historical enrichment of the community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Terrebonne Parish Council hereby urges and requests the parish president to submit to the Office of Community Development an application for approval of the revised location for the sale and cooperative endeavor agreement involving the Finding Our Roots Museum and Morpho Inc., identifying 7928 Main Street, Houma, Louisiana as the project site. Be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the parish president for his consideration and action consistent with the intent herein expressed.
Okay. Mr. McGee.
Members, I'm only here as representative of Mr. Martin Falls to answer any questions, provide some clarity, some background, if y'all have it, on how it got here. I know it's been sort of a long road to this point for something that should be somewhat simple. there's been a lot of miscommunication and a lot of misinformation across the board about what this project was, how it got started, and how it shifted. And I wanted to help provide some of that to you so you can understand as you make your decisions on how you want to proceed. First of all, Mr. Falls wants to thank all the members of the council, wants to thank Parish President Bajeron and all the staff for working so hard and diligently on trying to bring this project to fruition. It's really sort of simple in one set is that Mr. Falls, through his company, Marfa, owns several buildings on Main Street that are not occupied right now, and one that is occupied by HTV Studios. He had purchased the buildings next to him at one point in time as they were just buildings that became available, and he wanted to make sure he could keep his property in the condition he wanted it to. Through that process in the last administration, he came in contact with Ms. Scobie, who was also looking for a home for her museum that would highlight, I think, something that most reasonable people would see as something that would be great for the community, which is highlighting the minority communities of Houma and their travails and their tribulations they've had to get to this point. This is not uncommon, by the way. They have museums like this in Donaldsonville and Hammond and Baton Rouge. This is not some kind of pie-in-the-sky thing. This is something other communities are doing in communities of smaller size like Donaldsonville and maybe Hammond that's a little bit bigger than us. The North Shore has one, and then Memphis has a gigantic one, and New Orleans has various versions of this, and I think they also want to do a better one that rivals what Memphis has. So this is something that is part of a bigger trend, and also, frankly, part of a trend that brings tourism to the community, as there is a demonstrated market for these kind of things. This is not something that's completely out of nowhere. So she was looking for a home. She'd either outgrown or the other place was unsuitable. She came into contact with Mr. Falls, and they started having conversations on maybe she could buy HTV Studios and move into there, and he could maybe move next door into a smaller thing for what would more fit his needs. That concept always envisioned that Ms. Scobie would have the ability to do certain things at that building location, having fundraisers, having maybe an Airbnb component to it, just various things that could utilize the full building, because museums are hard, right? They tell a beautiful story or maybe a hard story, but they're not always revenue drivers, right? So sometimes you need other things to keep that story being told. We see that with the Regional Military Museum, which is a great asset to the community. They have a millage that helps keep that functioning for us. So there's always something that usually goes along with it. Very few things can survive with just its pure revenue alone. So with that said, we started looking at it, and that's when it kind of got started that there might be some community block grant funding coming. And, I share, you have no idea, I cannot express, and I know that y'all feel the same way, and I know Parish President Bajeron does too, the frustration with infrastructure, not only in Terrebonne Parish, but throughout the state. I share it with everybody. I mean, we don't even have to talk about it. I think everybody knows it, and if you want to say, raise your hand if you want $20 million or $9 million, $3 million to go to roads and bridges, like my hand's up, right? I'm not shying away from that. If we could take that CBGD funding and throw it on a bridge or a road, I would be telling Mr. Falls, let's do it tomorrow. But the true story is it doesn't work that way. And we can complain about it, we can be upset about it. The only thing we can really do is write Congress about it, but that's outside of the pay scale of everybody that's in this room right now. That money comes to communities to do community type funding things and initiatives, right? And we have to abide by those guidelines and do the projects that fit within those criteria. And that's where we find ourselves. And so it was an alternative. And then so we started proceeding with the sale. We were very appreciative. My client was, when Mr. Bajeron, when he took over as parish president, got more involved, started pushing the project on his own, and got, I think, increased the funding to $4.5 million. And I want to be very clear with everybody in the room and everybody in the crowd as I say this. Martin Falls hasn't received a dollar yet for any of this stuff. I think this is something that keeps getting misunderstood because of just the kind of the complication that goes to this. Ms. Scobie received $200,000 from the state of Louisiana as part of separate funding from the state that Senator Mike Feasey obtained for her, and of course with the support of the delegation, to help her realized this dream to go anywhere. It wasn't necessarily to buy this building or that building. It was for her to find a home somewhere, right? And this is in line with what Senator Feasey does. He's a big supporter of the regional museum. He loves museums. He loves telling these stories. So there's nothing untoward about it. This is just how it is. Again, later on, he obtained $500,000, which to my knowledge, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, Ms. Scobie has not received yet from the state. So that brings $700,000, $200,000, which she received, an extra $500,000 that's down the pipeline for the state to give to her. But of course, the state just doesn't give you dollars. It's not how it works. So there's also, paperwork that has to be filled out and things that you have to do to get that money, which he's in the process of doing. The $200,000 was then used to secure Mr. Foss's building as like anybody would do if they were going to buy a house. Like nobody goes buy a house and you don't put money down. That money, it was $200,000, is put in escrow. That means it's still Ms. Scobie's money. It's being held in a special account that can be either returned to her, depending on how the transaction ends up, or it can be put as an actual on the price. I don't think that determination on how that money's been used, also mainly because we don't even know what that looks like yet, right? We've been kind of floundering around on the transaction piece of this. Mr. Foss hasn't received any of it. I want to be very clear on that. And he has no intention of keeping the $200,000 that has been used to secure it. That just made it where he couldn't sell it to somebody else. If Chevron came and said, hey, we're moving back to Houma, we want to buy this building, he would say, sorry, I already have received $200,000 from Ms. Scobie. I can't do that. That's what the $200,000 gets you. Lo and behold, this project transformed into something other than what we originally envisioned it to. And then on top of that, the parish had a meeting. There was a lot of public sentiment and concern that was expressed. A lot of it made sense, to be honest, to Mr. Foss and to Ms. Scobie and to the administration, to certain council members that I've spoken to. In that, to be a good partner, Mr. Foss decided that he had other properties. He wasn't dead set. He can revamp what he's doing. And the third building in the line of the buildings he owns he could also sell that when it's not being used. It's currently available. He estimates it's probably going to be about $1 million for that building, but it's not set in stone. It'll have to go through the appraisal process and all the things that go along with it. And let me be very clear, too, because this has been something that's been online, is that the appraiser that appraised the HTV building is Mr. Charlie Butts. He's one of your appraisers. Like, this isn't some like pie in the sky guy who goes out and does whatever. This is a parish approved appraiser who's been doing parish appraisals for a long time. I think assertions that somehow this is like a cooked up appraisal is sort of ridiculous, and I think would be offensive to Mr. Butts, who's licensed and has all kind of credentialing requirements that he would never violate. He could disagree with somebody, but I don't think he would ever give up his license, and nor do I think you in your wisdom would ever not choose somebody who would have the integrity for the position. All that being said, he got back in touch with Ms. Scobie. They've been working on a deal to move to the new location. It's a much more scaled down project. It's much more in line with what the public wants. And people have said, I think it's much more feasible. I think it checks every box that this council and this administration is looking to do, and that the public has said at the last meeting that they wanted to see with this money. And it frees up money for y'all to do other needs. And so for all these reasons, it was decided to go forward with this new thing. It was a pivot from the last one based off of your concerns. So with that, I answer any questions you may have, but I'm really here just to give an outline of how we got here.
So Tanner, what you're telling us is that the $200,000 is in an escrow.
Correct.
It has interest now to it, whatever that may be. And if this falls through, Mr. Foss is going to give Ms. Scobie back the money, because I'm a little confused on that part, but this is...
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. Like if you went to buy a house and the deal fell through, you get your money back, unless there's a distinction between a down payment and earnest money, but for the most part, that's exactly how it works.
Okay. And you said that the money from the state can be used for operational costs, because when I went back to read it, one of them stated that it was to purchase a building. So
right.
Does the $500,000, is that just to purchase a building, or can it be used for an array of things?
That would be between Ms. Scobie and the state, to be honest with you. I don't know the details of what the state will allow, because the state will allow you some movement on that kind of stuff. It would probably be easier, more easily cleaned up next session for Senator Facey to just revise what the money is for to reflect what it's going to do and clear all doubts. I think that there's time for that.
Well, the reason why I'm asking that is because if you're seeking certain money from here, with getting a building, and the money is with the state for getting a building, because the CBDGDR money cannot be used for operational costs, is what I've been told, and maybe they can, if I'm wrong, please clear me up. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't become in jeopardy because something is done wrong with the money.
Right, but I mean,
Right.
I think ultimately at the end of the day, there's always the state just doesn't give you money and let you walk away with it. I mean,
no.
I wish that. I mean, I don't wish. I'm glad that they don't, but I mean, that's not the way it works. So they're going to have all the checks and balances. Nobody's going to allow somebody to use money at some point. Trust me, the state claws back money all the time that's been improperly used. And look, to answer your question, also, Mr. Falls is not in the business of running a Black History Museum. He's in the business of selling a property, and he's trying to give all the funding streams and be as flexible on funding streams. And look, he just told me, I didn't realize that the $200,000 was actually returned to the state today.
Well, no, just so you know, I'm not really, it's not on him. I'm worried about what's coming forward with the
Right.
museum. So this is not about.
Yeah, so you
part
just
of
have to
it.
check the boxes. We're trying to facilitate a sale and give as much flexibility to Ms. Scobie, and she can answer the questions better on how she plans on
Right.
operating than I could.
And that's probably where I'm coming to this, because I just found out about the 500,000. So now, with your letter.
I mean, that's a
you
public
put in
document too,
200.
Ms.
Right.
Chauvin. Like, that's not something that's done. That goes to like 80 committee hearings, a floor
Right.
vote in the House, a floor vote in the Senate. This isn't some like sneak attack. I mean, I know, I understand
it's
you don't
not.
read the bill like constantly. I get that too. I wouldn't either, but it is.
I don't.
It's one of the most public things that you can do is have
Right.
the state's finance bill done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tanner, for your explanation of all that. That clears things up tremendously for a lot of people. And if they don't believe it, it's shame on them, all right?
Right.
Because you did start from the beginning and brought it all the way to the end. I appreciate that. The only thing I want to say, President Bergeron, you said you had someone here from CSRS. I'd like for them to come up
Sure.
and explain, and thank you again, Tanner.
Yeah, I'm available if y'all have another question.
Sure.
I'm here for as long as y'all want me to be.
I'd like for them to come up and explain the process from here going forward, because we were in one process. Now that has to stop due to pulling the building away. So what do we have to do as a parish in terms of petitioning OCD, appraisals, just the entire process from here going forward?
How do we move forward with the project? So the project was approved to allocate resources of the allocation to the Finding Our Roots Museum. It was not tied to any particular location. That was done to provide maximum flexibility. Because at the time, there was not any definitive on that building. We just identified that we had a willing seller. So where do we go from here? We have to go back and amend the application with OCD. We have to get approval from them to move forward with a new location. And then once they give us that approval, we have to go through the process, the same process we're currently going through at the current location of getting an appraisal. And the appraisal process itself is you have to get an appraiser that is approved by the parish, that has no prior affiliation or has done the appraisal for the owner on that location. Once you get that appraisal, you have to get another third-party review appraiser. If all that checks out and the building appraises, then that's what the grant dollars cannot pay above appraised value. So you get through all that. You also have to go through an environmental review to make sure there's no environmental issues with the building. You also have to go through and make sure that the other criteria is met with LMI, which we will, because from what I understand, it's adjacent to the existing location, so we should be able to check that box. And then we have to take all that, prepare a budget, and get a budget amendment through OCD. And once you get through all that, then you can proceed with purchasing the building, making any renovations, and going forward from there.
So once the appraised value, once it is appraised, then it's between Mrs. Scobie and Mr. Falls if he would agree to that number.
And not only this project, but there's 29 projects in the program. every single one of those projects has to follow a very prescriptive process that comes from the federal government through HUD to OCD and down to the recipient or the grantee, which is Terrebonne Parish. So you're absolutely correct. If it is the will of the council and the parish as the grantee to move forward with this new location, then we have to start the process with OCD and go through all those steps that we have to get through many more hoops before this project can actually be a reality. So the money, the good news is the money is for Terrebonne Parish. That's your money. It's not going to go away. You can easily, and there's two paths you can take. One is easier than the other. The easier path is to reallocate whatever savings you may have to one of the other 28 approved projects. Since they were already approved, you're simply modifying the budget and increasing it on one of these other approved projects. If you would like to approve a new project that is not one of the 29 approved projects, that is a much more difficult and longer process. You have to go back through public hearings. You have to amend the action plan. There's other steps you have to do to propose a new project. So if it's the will of the council to take whatever savings may be realized from this new location and allocate it, the easier thing to do is to allocate it to one of the other 28 projects.
And Mr. Guava, thank you for, you gave a really good, insightful presentation on the nuts and bolts of what CDBG are and what we have to do as a parish for Office of Community Development, HUD regulations. Tana, thank you for giving us that historical view, background of how we got to this point. I want to turn some attention to the actual resolution itself that Councilman Amity proposed, and I seconded it. Yeah, I want to start off by thanking Ms. Neal for helping us write this proposed resolution, the new one. It's thoughtful, and it's well done, and we worked together on that. You know, I just wanted to let everybody know that our parish attorney approves this. I want to express my strong support for this revised resolution put forth by Councilman Amity and myself regarding the new location for Finding Our Roots. It demonstrates a clear commitment to fiscal responsibility, community enrichment, and the preservation of African American history in Terrebonne Parish. The new location offers significant advantages over the previous considered site. Not only does it present a more manageable scale for the museum project, but it also introduces an opportunity for substantial savings. We already talked about that, the $2 million in CDBG DR funds. And these savings, as we've heard, can be allocated to other critical projects that we set as priorities. Equally important is the flexibility that the revised location affords the Finding Our Roots Museum by minimizing the burdensome parish restrictions and streamlining the administrative processes with the Office of Community Development. The museum will be able to pursue new funding sources, diversify its revenue streams, and ensure its operational sustainability for years to come. The museum will be able to continue its mission to tell the compelling story of African Americans in Terrebonne Parish and its growth as a cultural and educational institution. If the council decides to, the council's decision to address these public concerns regarding the scale, the financing, and the feasibility is commendable to all of us. The revised proposal directly responds to genuine feedback from the public, demonstrating a willingness of us to listen and adapt for the greater good of our community. By approving the new site, the Parish Council was positioning the Finding Our Roots Museum to open its doors sooner, giving residents and visitors alike the opportunity to engage with the vital history and heritage that shapes our parish. And I urge you, Jason, our parish president, to support and submit the necessary applications to Office of Community Development confirming 7928 Main Street as the designated project site. This action not only supports the museum's immediate objectives, but it's going to also foster long-term cultural, educational, and economic benefits for Terrebonne Parish. Y'all, let's move forward together in favor of this revised resolution and embrace the promise of a more enriched, inclusive, and resilient community. Thank you.
Ms. Chauvin.
Thank you. Jason, I have a few questions for you. When you got this letter, you said that you had sent it off to see, if this was going to be doable. I know it's important to have the operational sustainability plan beforehand, because if we don't have a plan, then we may be on the line if it does fail. Is that what we're looking at? Because I'm looking at 4.5 million, and now the building is 1, so we went down, to the 1 million, but there's still 1.5, so we're actually doing 2.5 million?
That's what my understanding was of the request. Like I talked about earlier, as soon as we got the letter, I want to say it was last Wednesday, we did pass it on to CSRS to have them go through and, look at what the opportunities are, and been preparing a response since then. I'm hoping to have that by the end of this week, and to talk about what the next steps are. And like Taylor talked about, with this new building, you're gonna have to go through some of the things of, what the building cost looks like, what that is going to appraise for, and so I think we're not we don't have a clear answer on that yet. And as soon as we do, we'll let everybody know. But the first step is to start the application, or to edit the application with OCD, and then take this each step as we go through, which I'd imagine at some point it's going to have to come back for the council for a budget amendment. As we understand, it's going to have to follow the same steps that project and the rest of the projects followed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gravois, one question, please. The Office of Community Development, at this point right now, has anything been sent to them on this first specific building?
Nothing official has been sent to OCD yet for this revised location.
Yes, sir.
However, we have started on some preliminary budget revisions that would need to happen in order to progress this revision. But simply internal to our office, we have not submitted that to OCD yet.
Okay, because just from my perspective, based on them not even knowing a specific facility, like you had said, changing facilities, budgeting that for whatever expenses that are added on to that to get that dollar amount, doesn't seem like a stretch to me, just from what I'm hearing, and that we could actually send that in and also possibly have 2 existing funded projects that we might want to enhance with any remaining funds. Yeah. And from speaking to Ms. Malden, before, there's a lot of precedent and historical data that if you don't spend all the money for a particular project, they're usually pretty good about allowing you to use it on existing, already funded, enhanced projects, is what I was told.
Yeah, so your perception's pretty accurate. And with the beauty of this revised location, it's adjacent to the original one, because the key thing on this particular funding, you have to have this low to moderate income check mark. That's what the money is set up. And since the building is adjacent, you're still meeting this LMI requirement of using those dollars. If you wanted to go put this thing in gray, you would have a problem. But since it's adjacent, that helps this particular application. And yes, it's going to be subject to the final budget being approved. the appraisal, the building renovation cost, the startup cost, the whole ball of wax, right?
Yes, sir.
But once we get that revised budget amendment approved through OCD, whatever monies are surplus from the preliminary budget of $4.5 million or whatever that number was, I'm working from memory, that can be reallocated to those other 28 projects.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and if I'm understanding correctly, that's exactly where we're at in this process. So there's been no appraisal, there's been no environmental inspection. So it's not like these things have been done and we have to redo them, right, if we do change locations. And I think what you were saying was geography matters, right? Yeah, that's a big plus, right? But I guess my point I'm trying to make is the appraisal and the environmental, it hadn't been done yet. So it's not like we backing up and having to redo these things, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
The only thing we really have to redo is really we have to, it's going to be an amendment with OCD on the project application. But we don't, you're right, we have not done an appraisal in the new location, no environmental review yet, no building renovation estimates, none of that has been done. So we have to do all those things according to the OCD and HUD guidelines, and actually present a budget to OCD that meets all of the rules of the CDBG DR funding.
Absolutely. So this passing tonight and going through these procedures, if this passes tonight, let's say, and going through these procedures with the new building, it's not a substantial change to the project because they didn't know the project specifics in the first place, correct?
Right. Yeah, we're not losing a ton of time. We are losing some, but not much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight and sharing.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Yep, my pleasure.
Mr. Trusclair.
Yeah, just a point of notice. Mr. Gravois firm, I know we've been using a lot of acronyms here tonight just so everybody can understand OCD, HUD, CSRS. CSRS is a consulting firm that actually working on the parish's behalf. They're not affiliated with any government agency, HUD, OCD, or anything. They are actually technically hired by the parish to handle this for us. So if there's any questions about it, these guys can't speak for OCS. HUD, FEMA, anybody, but they work for us, for Terrebonne Parish government. So just for clarity, that way, I know a lot of people don't know all these acronyms mean, and it takes a lot of time to get caught up with some of this stuff. So just wanted to bring that out. Thanks.
Just for a little bit more clarity, can you explain what would be considered or how it's determined that a cost savings is imminent? Okay, I get it that the initial building cost estimated $3 million, whatever it was. We sort of had somewhat of a budget laid out for us in that respect. But this building here, it's going to be cheaper. So what's the cost savings? How would we, determine that? And from that cost savings, is that monies to be allocated to a different project? Or since it is allocated to Terrebonne Parish, that comes back to the parish? Or does it, since it was written under the application of Miss Scobie's museum, does it stay with Miss Scobie?
Yeah, very good questions. And I'll try to kind of answer them one by one because I think there's a few different questions buried in there. So the first one is, as part of the recovery program, the parish of Terrebonne was awarded $117 million, and the parish was the grantee of those funds. The parish had the responsibility to develop projects that met the criteria of the federal funding and present a proposal to the Office of Community Development. So the first answer to your question is the money can be allocated to any one of those 29 approved projects, right? So in order to prepare the proposal, we had to develop preliminary budgets. These budgets were not based on any sort of factual information, well, not say factual, but any sort of approved appraisals or anything, because it's too early in the process. But we had to demonstrate to OCD that we were allocating all of the money across all the projects, right? Once they give us approval, then you have to move forward with all of the steps that are necessary to actually comply with the program requirements. The devil's in the details, right? So for any property acquisition, you have to get an appraisal, and you have to get, you have to get the appraisal, environmental clearance. This issue of an approved budget, I think you're probably comparing that to the preliminary budget. So in order to determine the budget, we have to get an appraisal. We have to determine the building renovation costs, any sort of environmental remediation. Whatever that costs for whatever location is ultimately decided on, then that's allocated to that project. Whatever savings that are going to be realized from the final cost with the approved appraisal, the building renovation costs, as compared to the preliminary budget, those dollars would be available to allocate to other projects in the approved program. So does that answer your question specifically?
Yeah, it kind of does. But just in layman terms for the public so they understand, whatever the cost is, there's $4.5 million allocated to the African American Museum's project, okay? And from there, if all those monies aren't spent, or if there's a substantial savings there, that's where I think the public is kind of confused of, if we spend $1 million on this building, how much will be put towards, activity costs, let's call it that. Because if you spend $1 million for a building, you have $4.5 million, well, you have $3.5 left. Where's that go? How much stays with the museum?
Yep.
That type of thing, or what's going to actually go back to the parish. I think that's where the concern is coming from with the public. But also, I'll kind of put something else out there. How often or how involved are you guys, CSRS? I've been in one meeting with you guys with the African American Museum, but of the 29 projects, how involved are you guys with the actual folks that's, say, the Miss Margie, and also with Martin, the buyer and the seller, and the parish as well? Or is it mainly just the parish and you guys when it comes to making the decisions? Because I talk to these guys and it's, I don't know. So there's a disconnect there somewhere. I think if you guys are facilitating this with the parish, all parties involved should be at the table, so Ms. Margie's might not be, misinformed. Mr. False might not be misinformed. That's a lot of information, and some of the questions that I ask, they don't even know. But we got a $4.5 million deal on the table. That's where my concern is. And moving forward, since we have to revisit all this and start all over, this is our opportunity so all the misinformation, miscues out there can actually be eliminated by bringing everybody to the table, whether it be Marfo, Miss Margie, Activate the Bayous, whomever it is. And not only that, but the council too as well. Because I think if we have to make these decisions on what's best for the parish, I think we need to be better informed. I can speak for myself for sure, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the council feels the same way. So that's kind of my questioning, because I know the parish is probably still spinning because they don't really understand that.
Yeah. So all good concerns and all good questions. Again, I'll try to answer the one about the budget first. The final budget is determined on what is an allowable cost under the CDBG guidelines. Purchase a building, renovate it, and then a certain amount of startup costs can be allocated to get the project stood up. You can't allocate long-term operational costs. You have to demonstrate that there is a sustainable financial revenue stream to sustain this. And that's when if you can't do that within that 5-year period, that there is some clawback provision. So if we do want to move to a new location, and that's what's decided here, then we will go to work to prepare that revised budget and try to get all of the things that can be applied to this project, building renovations, purchase, some startup costs. We'll try to build the absolute best budget we can, and then that becomes the budget amendment for that particular project. In terms of the communication on project selection, under these guidelines, the council, the parish president, us, no one can unilaterally pick a project. And that's not our rules, that's not the state's rules, that's HUD's rules. You have to have a community participation plan, which we did in the months following Hurricane Ida. We went out, and some of you may remember this, and we did town hall meetings almost in every district. And there was community surveys, there was a lot of work done, and we had to submit all that to HUD and OCD to prove to HUD and OCD as a condition of getting the money that we went through all the public hearing processes. So if we want to change projects, we have to amend that, okay? And that's the process. So the parish president, any one of the councilmen can't pull a project out the air and say, now I want this project to be on the plan. You may say, we'd like you to explore that, but it's got to go through the same process all the other projects. You got to go back out for a public hearing. You have to make sure it meets all the LMI criteria. That the money is that grant award is established to help. So it's not those individual project decisions can't be made unilaterally. If that answers your question. In terms of the communication, we're involved every step of the way. There is a lot of guidelines to comply with, and any misstep on any of that puts the parish as the grantee at risk for getting some of that clawed back. So we're here to make sure that doesn't happen for the parish.
And again, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. I would like to see the different entities, the Miss Margie and her staff, her board members, and also Marfo Inc., so they understand what's happening. Because if they don't understand what's happening, then it's kind of a moot point, I would say. They shouldn't have to find out here kind of what's going on and how things work. But most importantly, last thing I'll share is we have 29 projects. I get it. We do have 29 projects. It's a lot of projects, a lot of work. I've been, ever since I came aboard and starting to learn the projects, it's been rather difficult, but most importantly, we have weather stations, we have activate the bayous, we have steam centers, we have a whole array of projects. None of those projects get this sort of attention, and there's one common denominator, and I'll let everybody else figure that out. Thank you. I'd just like to ask, is it within I guess within my pay grade to be able to be included on the communications? I just want to, I'm a bibliophile, if everybody knows what that means, but I like to read. Can I be attached to those emails and those communications when it comes to this new reinventing of the wheel for us to be able to do the project for Finding Our Roots? Send me your file. I'd love to read every page, everything that you send me. Thanks. Or yeah, if everybody wants it, that'll eliminate a lot of the questions we might have.
Good.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I think that what is being done is being educated by a number of people. And in that education, I found myself listening to Mr. Pleasure when he said, bring in MARFAR, bring in CSRS, bring in Finding Our Roots Museum with the administration. And I'm glad Mr. Pleasure just made his statement, because we had to take a trip to Baton Rouge because I didn't understand last year. And in that not understanding And it's so much the people of Terrebonne Parish don't understand either. So going forward, it is very, very important that all parties, and we are the representatives of the people, we should know what we're doing, what road we're going down. It was a question that if we're making all of these appointments for environmental studies and stuff like that, one thing I wanted to understand how we get to zero. If we go in all of this environmental study, and that was one problem I had with the original project, is that we took $4.5 million and we had all these environmental studies and all kind of appraisals and stuff like that. It's kind of hard for me to believe for us to come exactly to zero when finding our Roots Museum would end up with zero. I heard the term said, if it fails. But if these 9 people that set up here, with the help of CSRS, with the help of this administration, saying that this museum is going to be in Terrebonne Parish and a positive position and place in Terrebonne Parish going forward, I can't sit here and say that I'm going to make a decision and expect failure from Terrebonne Parish. If anybody not getting it, I mean what I'm saying. This is supposed to work, just like paddle boating, just like everything else that we have and we support. Whether it's 9-0, 5-4, 6-3, at the end of the day, this decision is made for Terrebonne Parish. So, without any further ado, it's been a motion by Mr. Almody, second by Mr. Hamner. In the order that you made the motion, because it's rather lengthy in wording. Members, cast your vote. No.
You don't have to just say it.
Yeah. We have 8 registered votes, and I have problems with my machine. It's a unanimous vote. Motion passes. It's 9-0.
This segment was brought to you by Buick. Exceptional by design.